any flag, banner, or icon should be used in the school, but the U.S. flag, the Virginia flag, and the school flag. When some flags and banners are permitted under the framing of unity and inclusion, but simultaneously promote a clique, a brotherhood, a sect, you're creating the on-ramp for gangs, not unity. I'm thankful for the remodeling of Christiansburg High School. I'm impressed with how the bathrooms would accommodate the crisis of the teenage gender discovery system. It seems we found a solution where all students' rights were protected. Individual toilets with communal washing stations. I hope that that's still the current thing. This allows us to focus on education. But I'm questioning, will you make the same consistency in locker rooms? Will there be separate locker rooms for children undergoing gender exploration? What about the newer Auburn and Blacksburg schools, older schools, elementary schools even? How will the decision in Christiansburg be consistently implemented across all strands in all schools? To force children who are going through their gender discovery to use bathrooms, changing rooms, locker rooms, and the like with children who are not in the same exploration process infringes the rights of one onto the other. I imagine that this is a financial obstacle, that you're not given the authority, but in that you're not given the authority to violate the rights of one student to empower the rights of another student. I challenge you to focus on students, on writing, reading, mathematics, history, science, arts, technology, and be careful not to make our teachers counselors and social workers that they weren't hired to do. They're not paid enough. We know that. We're working on that. But don't ask them to do two jobs. And time doesn't permit, so I'm not going to talk about how frustrated I am about the book process. I'll come back to that at a different time. But I'm asking, what you do affects me. It impacts me personally. It impacts the resale value of my home. It impacts the availability of future employees. Your decisions create atmospheres. Your words create worlds, and I live in your world. I'm challenging you to be consistent with your decisions and do not naively participate in division. Do not violate the rights of one child to frame it in unity and inclusion.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Our next speaker is Frank Martinelli, and after that, Bob Beard.
My name is Frank Martinelli, Blacksburg, Montgomery County, and I have a high school-aged child. I'd like to talk to the Board of Education about the fabric of the community, with its small-town feel and conservative values. How is this affirming the LGBTQ movement into our school system, into those conservative values? We are not on board with the gender-affirming bathrooms in Christiansburg High School or inappropriate books in the school libraries. These actions and attitudes indoctrinate our children to a political agenda that is being used to further racism, hate, and to divide us. As Christians, we cannot hate anybody. We certainly don't hate the LGBTQ community, but as Christians, we cannot condone the behavior. Our children are labeled homophobic, racist, white supremacist, and bullies if they disagree. And adults are demonized, and we are fascist or right-wing extremists. We're all entitled to our opinion, just like you. We can't why can't the matters of sexual orientation remain private? Why is the LGBTQ agenda promoted at all? This is an in-your-face approach and makes things worse. Private bathrooms should be available to anyone who wants to use them. If a girl doesn't want to use a bathroom or a locker room that the biological male is using, there should be a room available for her. Why does the male comfort take priority over the girls? The Board of Education serves as an education of our children in the fundamentals of reading, writing, and arithmetic. It is not in the state's job to raise our kids. That's our job. When students graduate high school, they should be able to balance a checkbook, understand law, and how the government works. Today, they graduate thinking that they should get a trophy high-paying job and nothing really matters. Interim report cards are distributed so that we can find the shortfallings, but why bother? There's no consequences in place. Kids are promoted whether they read, write, never mind critical thinking. When you sit in the county building downstairs, sic semper tyrannis, a Latin word.
Mr. Martinelli, I'm sorry, your time is up.
Well, I just say, fellow citizens, get rid
Mr. Martinelli, your time's up. Thank you.
Get rid of them.
All right, next speaker is Bob Beard, and after that, Joanne Price. Mr. Beard, we're starting your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Bob Beard. I live here in Christiansburg. And we've been last session here, and then board supervisors been talking about updating the CHS project and so forth. And still, the major question comes back to money. Salem High School did the same renovation basically for $35 million. You guys are wanting to spend $75 million more dollars than what Salem did to build Blacksburg High School is only $70 million. We're $75 million above budget. Altogether in spend, and it's $25 million more than what was allocated against that bond. So I've been talking to Mandy Hall, who's the Salem school district CFO, and verifying all these projects. So both renovations strive for as much natural light as possible, means there's outside windows. Both renovations have full glass cafeteria walls. Both renovations have glass entryways. Both renovations created new media rooms. All the gyms are updated. Include new construction. Both of them include 2 new buildings for new construction. Both renovations include strategic HVAC upgrades. The only difference is the boarding room bathrooms versus stalls, bowing down to change your model policy. CHS costs $75 million more than Salem did. That's $1,200 per registered voter more. Okay, and we don't talk about why is Salem and why is CHS so much more expensive on a school that built at the same time by the same people back in the mid-70s and the same renovations. It doesn't match up for me. That's why I keep on harping on this. Why we want to spend $75 million more than they did. I know we have inflation, but it's not 300%. And at the same time, that we had the bond was for $85 million. You're going $25 million dollars in unsecured funds that you got to move in other monies to would help address the East Montgomery High School track. The Charlottesville Middle School needs renovations. Plus, we got 900 homes being built by Blacksburg High School. We're going to have overcrowding issues. So we had to do what Sue Cass mentioned about moving kids to other schools. But how are we going to pay for the $125 million we're going to need to address the overcrowding issues at Blacksburg Middle School and Blacksburg High School? We're spending $110 million on 400 more students. We're going from 1,200 students to 1,600 students. Both schools did that. There's 22 new classrooms. There's, as I see, there is no difference between the two projects other than cost. So I'm asking you guys to to reconsider spending that much money so we have the money for Blacksburg High School and Middle School when they get done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beard. And the next speaker is Joanne Price.
Honoring Pride Month, biggest issue here is whose agenda is going to be taught in school? What's going to be taught in school? Why not Americanism? Why not going back to the founding fathers? Why not going back to what makes sense for the well-being of the country and for all of the people to live in freedom, safety, and security? How about reading, writing, arithmetic? How about letting the kids, the children, parents raise them? How about having an atmosphere that is very simple? I grew up in a community. It was a segregated community. However, when we went to school, our teachers were stellar teachers. As a matter of fact, they were role models. And I, for one, my fifth grade teacher, had such an influence on me that I decided I didn't want to teach, but I did decide I wanted to be a professional. So kids today, instead of having their teachers talk about sex, talk about those things that shouldn't even be talked about in public, especially in a mixed class, direct those children to what really matters in life so that they can fulfill their God-given purpose, because everybody has a specific purpose. That's why they're uniquely created. But the main thing I want to say to the board here is that every one of you have a responsibility, and it's a deep responsibility. It's called accountability. The accountability doesn't stop only with the parents or with the taxpayers, but more than none with Almighty God. And that is what I want to say tonight, is that where do you stand when you are weighed in the balance?
Thank you, Ms. Price. I believe that is the end of our public address. All right. Next on the agenda, I have payment of the bills. Do I have a motion to approve the payment of the bills as presented? I have a motion and a second. Ms. Drake, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Vaughn? Yes. Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Graham? Yes. Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Cass? Yes. Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Mr. Trabaka?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to acknowledge receipt of the financial summary report?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Drake, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Vaughn? Yes. Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Graham? Yes. Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Cass?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Mr. Trabaka?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. All right, moving on to the business meeting portion of our evening. First up is a report from the superintendent, Dr. Bragan.
Thank you, Board Chair Chewbacca. Just a few things. One is that our summer programs are in full swing, and it's great to see the kids and the staff in the buildings in the summer. Dr. Wickham and I actually got a chance to go and visit the Camp Invention program that was taking place at Falling Branch Elementary School, and it was really a great sight to see the kids that were actively engaged in those STEM activities and the enthusiasm and joy they brought to being in school in the summertime, which was really quite a sight to see. So kudos to the school board for all the support with the summer programs and the staff that are engaged in those activities, and our parents for bringing our kids to those programs in the summer. It'll be a great benefit to them and the division as we move forward. The second thing I want to report on is something from the Virginia Board of Education, and I actually got that right, the Virginia Board of Education. We got notification last week of two things that I think are worthy of note and I want to share with the school board. The first is Christiansburg High School was awarded the Continuous Improvement Exemplar Award. They're one of only 93 schools in the state to get that award. And the reason they got that award was that they've demonstrated over the past 3 years a significant increase in the graduation rate and completion index. So kudos to Christiansburg High School staff, students, and administration for doing that. Something to be very proud of. Coupled with that, again, from the Virginia Board of Education, Harding Avenue Elementary School received the Highest Achievement Exemplar Award, one of only 48 schools in the Commonwealth to receive such an award. And in order to get that award, the school had to be accredited. The school had to meet the state benchmarks in reading, math, and science. All student groups within the school met the state benchmarks in reading and math. And for schools with 2 or more subgroups, there is no more than 5% percentage points between the lowest performing group and all other students in the school. So again, kudos to the students, the staff, and the administration of Harding Avenue Elementary School. That's quite an accomplishment. And lastly, I just want to update the board that we have 2 RFPs that are coming due this week. One is for the carve-out for our prescription plan. We look forward to getting that information and hopefully saving the division a significant amount of money on our medical prescription costs. And also the RFP we had for our additional school counseling services for next year. And we'll bring that to the board when we get all those finals and we tally what that will be. Thank you, Board Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Reagan. Next up, we have a staffing update. I believe this is a presentation from Mr. Knott.
Good evening, and we do have our staffing update for the month of June. We have filled quite a few positions that you'll see as we go through the slides. We still have some positions that we need to fill. That is not unusual this time of year as school staff are kind of moving around and making decisions on where they want to work in the next school year. We do have a director of secondary and a principal at CHS in the hiring process. We are accepting applications for the principal of CMS. We are looking at administrator of gifted position. We need to fill that. We have filled the gifted resource teacher position at CMS. Reading specialists and reading teachers, we have filled 2 of those 4. And we have 2 in the hiring process. So hopefully the next time I report this out, those will all be filled. We do need a couple of business education teachers. We have a core cadet teacher in the hiring process. And we need a family and consumer science teacher now at CMS. We are currently in the hiring process for a pre-K teacher at AES. And we have several teachers, K through 5. We are accepting applications, but we also have 3 that are in the hiring process. We have 2 HPE teachers that are in the hiring process. We have a candidate in the hiring process for the BMS social studies position. We now need a math teacher at CHS. We have a instructional coach that's in the hiring process. The placement there is to be determined. And we also have a literacy reading coach. Placement is to be determined, and candidate is in the hiring process. Currently, we have 2 counselor positions that are unfilled. One is in the hiring process. We may be adding some more to this in the near future, but right now that's where we stand. We have, I'm sorry, that says 3. It should say 2. We have 2 candidates in the hiring process for English teachers at the middle school level, one at BMS and one at CMS. Special education teachers, we have 9 of those at various locations. Dr. Walker and his staff and principals are working vigorously to get those positions filled. We have a speech language pathologist that is currently in the application process, earth science teacher and teacher, theater arts teacher, and we're accepting applications for those. We currently just have 1 instructional aide position vacant, 2 lunch recess aide positions vacant. Those part-time aide position, those 2 are still vacant as well. We have a preschool initiative aide, a couple of 3 special education aides, and 1 school nurse that we're still working to fill. Our director of facilities starts in July, so we will have a director of facilities in July. We have 5 4.5-hour bus driver positions and 1 6.5-hour bus driver position that is vacant, 2 bus aide positions that are vacant. We have a candidate for the vehicle mechanic We have a mechanic in the hiring process for transportation. The carpenter locksmith position has been filled, finally. We still have 2 HVAC technician positions. One is in the hiring process. And then we have 15 custodians at this time that we're working to fill. We have 2 in the hiring process, and Robbie has, I believe she told us today, 4 or 5 interviews scheduled for this week, trying to fill some more of those custodian positions. And we have one computer technology person that we're working to fill. And to end the year, from January to May, we had a 92.82% fill rate for teachers. And in aides, from January to May, we had a 52.39% fill rate. So we definitely saw from January on improvement in both of those areas. Any questions?
So with 15 custodians, this is a huge area for us. What are we gonna do when we can't fill those positions? And if folks are feeling overwhelmed in buildings, especially when they're there by themselves or for long period of times, when folks are not feeling that the buildings are being cleaned the way they should.
Robbie is working with staff, moving people around, trying to help in schools where staff is limited. We are advertising for those positions. You know, currently, I think we have a 3.1% unemployment rate. Finding people for jobs is just very, very hard right now. And I don't know how to find more. We're advertising. I wish I had this magic answer that I could give you, that we would get more applicants and be able to hire more people. But we are working as diligently as we can to try to improve that.
One of the things, Ms. Franklin, we did this year, over the course of the last year, was on the weekends, we'd subcontract out and try to deep clean the bathrooms, hallways, large group areas, try to catch up on some of the things. It's not a great solution, but it tries to triage, and making sure the buildings are clean and the learning environments are appropriate for staff and students. I would imagine if we can't fill these positions, we'd be resorted to doing something like that in the fall as well.
Because even though we're moving people around, it's like taking from Peter to pay Paul.
Agreed.
And back and forth, and it's, as we see with our numbers increasing, folks are just getting worn out. So we're gonna have to figure out something else to try to get people in the buildings.
We will work on that.
It's, sorry, I had one, I guess, comment that it's hard from these presentations to really get a good sense of, is this, at this point in the summer or in the, in the time off, is this normal? Or the numbers that we have normal? And it sounds like it is, but maybe some of them are higher, maybe some of them are lower. So I guess, again, I would, if we could, if we're going to do these presentations for the board, I think it would be a good idea to know, what is the average rate, especially, maybe we don't have those numbers. Maybe we should start collecting them now. Here's what our absentee rates are in, May, June, July, and August, right? And then that way in the future, we know, are we behind the ball, or are we kind of on track? Because if we're behind and there's something that you need from us to help, solve the problem by August, then I think, it would be good. The earlier that we can identify that, I think the better.
We can work on that as well.
Yeah.
It's not data that we currently have. Just in my 4 years here, this is normal. Again, some positions are higher than others, and I think that's just kind of cyclic. It just kind of flows through.
And that's a data point right there, and that's okay. That's good to know. But all right, any other?
Well, it looks like our bus drivers are ticking up.
Bus drivers and bus aides. I think this time last year we had a lot more bus aide vacancies than we do right now.
Next on the agenda, policy 2-4.1, community use of school facilities.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chewbacca. I
Oh,
think.
did I skip one? Oh, I did. I'm sorry. I skipped the supplemental appropriation. Do I have a motion to approve the supplemental appropriation of $300,000 for the school nutrition budget program?
So moved.
Any discussion on this?
So, why are we still supplementing this program?
I apologize. Ms. Miano, I think you can best address this question. Would you mind to pop up?
In doing our final year in accounting, we're found that school nutrition would be over their appropriation for the fiscal year. And so once we would pay all of the payroll out, we would need the additional $300,000. We get that back through the federal reimbursements. That's why that's the offset, the federal reimbursement and the additional expenditures. Does that answer?
We will get this back.
Yeah. Yes. We haven't gotten May's reimbursement yet.
So is this just a, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. Well, the program is supposed to be self-sustaining, so.
Yeah, this is not coming from, this is within their own budget. There's no funds coming from the operating budget for this. Yeah, it's a timing issue.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion, board? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Drake, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Vaughn. Ms. Franklin.
Yes.
Ms. Graham. Yes. Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
Ms. Cass.
Yes.
Ms. Parton. Yes. Mr. Chewbacca.
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. So now we move on to policy 2-4.1, community use of school facilities. Does anyone wish to make a motion regarding the revised policy?
So moved. Sorry.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this? I'm assuming you guys discussed this the last time, right? Okay.
It's awesome that that Annie and her team worked to get this organized and figured out, and it'll work a lot smoother going forward.
I do have one question. I know sometimes over the years, when we as a district have gotten funding from state and lottery and different things, sometimes the funding isn't in addition, it's in place of. So I'm hoping that the changes that we made are not something that, oh, okay, for an example, my conversations about the rent going to, it won't be, oh, well, you got this, so now we don't have to give this to this. I don't want to open that can of worms. I'm hoping that it's in an addition to what normally would have been funded, to whether it's the auditorium, whether it's baseball, whether it's football, whether it's track, whatever it may be. Do you follow where I'm coming from? I think sometimes that, like I said, I know when we got lottery funding, the state kind of said, well, you got a lottery, so we don't have to give you this, so.
Right, is it in addition to, or is it supplanting, right? So this is kind of both, because first we have to fill what we've already been doing, and then the additional will be what provides extra resources to that school, to those schools. Because we have been bringing some funds in, and so those are kind of budgeted, but not what we believe we should if we could do this appropriately and consistently. So we have to kind of fill the gap that we've already been providing, and then the over and above will be what will give the schools the extra funds.
So what, basically, yeah, no, it's not going to do that.
No, I'm saying it will, but it can't, we still got to use the money, we still got to provide what we did before. So for example, if we brought in $60,000 in rent last year, we still need that $60,000 because it's something that we budget. But the above and beyond that we would bring in for use is what would go directly back to those teams, if that makes sense. I can't tell you every dollar would be a new dollar, because every dollar won't be new coming in, if that makes sense.
But I don't think the question to begin with was whether it was a new dollar or not. To me, the question was about the arrow marked of where the rent would go.
I guess what I'm saying is right now it has been going back into funds that pay for facilities type of things.
Right.
So if we've been budgeting $60,000 and the first 60,000 we bring in, that those funds are still needed. But it would be the additional money that we would bring over and above, that would be new money to those programs.
Annie, can you explain that to me since I wasn't here at the last meeting? So as far as the policy goes, because this one wasn't redlined and I was trying to just go through it as much as I could, but it doesn't talk about exactly how the money gets shuffled over. That's not part of the policy. The policy is just how we collect rent to basically cover the wear and tear on the facilities. And then my assumption, of course, is that, you know, your team would redistribute that money however it was needed to make sure that all the schools had the facilities that they need, right? But some of what you're saying maybe is not quite lining up.
I think that what Ms. Bond, and correct me if I'm incorrect, you know, some fields get used more than others. And so let's say, for example, one that gets a lot of use is CHS baseball. So CHS baseball, that wear and tear, those funds need to go back to help pay for that school, right? We allocate a certain amount for facility maintenance and use, and it's not anywhere near what it should be. So some of those funds do come because when we budget our revenues. We know what's going to come in. So say we knew we would get $60,000 from facility use. That was money that we already budgeted that would go back in because we thought that those funds would come in. However, what we need to be doing is consistently charging users, and that has not been consistent. That's the reason for the revised process and policy, so that we can be more consistent, that will bring in more revenue, that will provide more revenue back to the schools. I guess what I was trying to clarify for you, Ms. Bond, is I don't want it to sound like it is exactly every dollar would be new, because we do budget on the facility use money that comes in. So what we've already budgeted, that would be money that was already going into facilities, right? But it's not above and beyond. The new funds that came in would then be extra money for schools to use for those things that they come to us and ask for. They would already have those funds that would be available to them.
I still worry that that's not going to fix the problem.
It certainly will not fix the problem of not having enough money for facilities. You know, it's a step towards working on that, but, you know, athletic fields take quite an amount of money to fund. So would it fix that problem? No, but does it give us another revenue stream and another way for schools to have the materials that they need? It will help us with that. What we can do next year to help is kind of track it as we go, show you what we were collecting this year, kind of what that looks like throughout the next year, maybe do quarterly if you'd like, to show you, because I understand the concern. I can't tell you dollars until we put it into place and start to see that happen. But what I can tell you is there are groups who have not been consistently paying, so we will bring more money in, and, you know, then we will put that money where it should go.
Because it just sounded like to me when you were explaining it, it's okay, that you were thinking that I was thinking that everything would be, okay, we're going to count all of this now. And I understand what you're saying, but even if you've got to meet that, it's still all the money is going to a group. And then wonder if you only get, I'm just going to throw this out, $1,000 above in, you know, that, and even if most of it is still earmarked for the group, it's still not going to go to the needs of what's getting used the most.
Right, and that's where they have to go back to facilities to.
But do you see what I'm saying? But that's kind of why, if you had some kind of an idea of saying, okay, I'm going to say the Blacksburg Auditorium brought in $5,000 this year of usage. Or no, let's even go just a broader, let's say 40,000 of that 60,000. But that means that auditorium was used 40,000% more, you know? So if they're only getting, then if out of that 60,000, then they're only getting $2,000 extra on top of that, that's not going to repair the usage of $40,000 worth of.
Can we use the example of like artificial turf? Let's say that like you have an artificial turf field that costs $100,000 to replace, and let's say that the expected lifespan for most of the fields, artificial turf for 5 years. So that's $20,000 a year basically, and I don't think these numbers are right. I'm just pulling out easy numbers
Too, right.
But let's say, you know, Christiansburg softball field is artificial turf and it's getting used a lot more and it's pulling in a certain amount of money. let's say it wears out in 4 years instead of 5, my expectation is a facility is going to replace that field. They're not just going to let it sit there, you know, worn out. You see what I'm saying? Because it got used more, so hopefully it'll get replaced more. And hopefully whatever the cost of that wear and tear comes out to, you know, $5,000 a year in that scenario. So that's what I would expect, that over time we would adjust our usage numbers and things like that. It gets harder for things like auditoriums, right? Like,
No, and I understand that completely, but what you're talking about is exactly what I'm talking about.
yes, correct.
But what I'm afraid of is
Yeah.
that's not what's going to happen.
but I think that we need to do it that, like, there might be something, like, for example, the softball field at Christiansburg might get more use than other softball fields, but the auditorium in Blacksburg might get more use. And, you know, for football games, the parking lots over in Blacksburg might get more, you know. So if we can spread that money out across all the schools and have it, you know, in order to make sure everybody
I follow
gets
you
what
and
they
understand exactly what you're saying to some point, but the football field for Friday night games is very different than it getting rented for every night for something else and wearing it out. There's a very big difference in what our sports programs and which that's where I'm coming from. It's kind of like if, you know, you're renting your home, what you do with your wear and tear in your home is one thing, but if you're having a get-together every single night and you're charging admission and your carpet's getting worn out from that, then you go and you say, well, hey, wait a minute, we've gotten this rent. Well, I'm sorry, we had to fix this over there, so there's no money. That's kind of the stuff that's been happening. So I'm just want to make sure that, you know, it's understood that that's the whole point of making the change, is to make sure that, okay, if Eastern Montgomery baseball needs dirt, they don't have to beg, barter, and plead to get it. Or if Christiansburg High School, all the coaches are doing all the work because there is no money given. There is none to give. But yet they've gotten it rented, they've gotten the money in from the rent, but they're not seeing any of it. That's the whole, and I'm just trying to lay it out there so that way it's completely understood what direction I'm trying to move in here.
Absolutely, and I think a couple of things Willis says with that. One is, the new policy is going to push those long-term users, because that's who you're referring to, right? You're not referring to Annie Whitaker wants to host a reception at the high school, right? Because one time she needs to use that, right? You're speaking mostly, I believe, about individuals, organizations who are renting our property over and over and over again, because that's where the real money does come from,
And that's
right?
true, but I don't think it really matters whether you rent it once or whether someone rents it 15 times. It's still usage.
Sure. Where I was going with that is we see the majority would come from the repeated users, because there are certain groups who want to have access to facilities on they conduct their business on our facilities. And so the policy will push those individuals to go into a long-term use facility agreement as opposed to individual rentals. What that will allow us to do is to plan for and know how much money is going to be coming in. So they would sit down and say, this is how, you know, some of them already know what they want next spring. They know dates all throughout the year that they would like to rent. And so what that will allow us to do is to, instead of time by time, we can build budgets and plan for it. And we can say, we know this organization is planning to use your facility 20 times. This is how much that's going to cost. This is the amount that would go into the general, say, operating, and then this is the amount that would go back to that team. That was one of the main reasons to put those long-term agreements into place, because what happens, unfortunately, is side handshake agreements, or you can use this property and then this group is paying for the property. There's a lot of that's happened. And so.
Why are you saying it goes back to that team? I guess, can you clarify?
So, for example, as Ms. Bond was saying, you know, let's talk about, we'll talk about baseball, because that is one of the fields that gets used a lot. It requires a lot of maintenance, right? So
Absolutely.
sometimes the maintenance comes from the agreement with that organization that they actually help us maintain the field. Well, that has a dollar value to us. In lieu of that dollar value, you know, if they are wearing down the bags at an increased rate because of the use, you know, the wear and tear on the property is increased, it needs to go back to that group, because You know, another group may not have had anybody on their field decreasing their facility. Or take, for example, you know, a basketball gym. A basketball gym takes a different type of wear and tear, much less than a turf field or a grass field that's outside. And so those groups that want those fields, the damage is to the field that they're on. And so trying to get the money back to those groups, you know, we don't often hear from our sports groups who don't have high levels of maintenance needs, right? If what they need is custodial staff to clean and take up, there's not a real concern, right? Like basketball, you need to have the lights working, you need the goals, you need basketballs, you know, all of those things. Very different than, say, what's happening on a track or on a softball or baseball field, you know, looking at like EMHS, you know, we don't have anything just sitting aside to just right off the bat pay for that. Those type of things have to be planned for. So that's kind of what we mean is some would go back to the general, is what you're saying, and some would go to that individual organization based upon, you know, us making sure that we're not making a budget deficit, if that makes sense. But, you know, I know it's new. We will continue to update the board and bring you reports on it, but the committee, you know, there's 20 school members and community members who work together. It's a new way to look at it. We tried to make it easier so that we could make it easier for folks to rent our facilities. We do believe we're going to see an increase in those rentals and in those long-term agreements, which will help us in the long term.
Because it's one of those things to where I love all of our facilities having better fields, but it does warrant everyone wanting to use them. You know, everybody wants to play on the better fields and run on the better tracks, and it does make a difference. And, you know, a lot of these folks are working themselves to death to make these fields out of their own pocket and out of their own time and out of their own, and it gets old. And a lot of these kids that are graduating, those parents that are giving all that time and effort, they're going to be going on to the next level. So, you know, and you may not have someone that comes in that can do that. They might not can afford to help personally finance the upgrades and things. So, thank you.
You're welcome. And one other reminder, I know you were just about done, is just we have also put into it that any donations or direct, you know, cash donation or product or equipment gets to count as facility use time. So we have some groups who say, hey, I'm going to give you, you know, we'll put a big number out there, make it happen, right? I'm going to give you $20,000 to help contribute to X, Y, and Z. In the past, that was just money they gave us. We want to reward that because we want people to do that. So that gives you X amount of our facility use that's equitable to how much you would have paid for the donation. I think that's also going to encourage individuals to come and use our fields as well, because they're going to get the return on their investment as opposed to feeling like, I just put this money out here, you know, I bought this for the school and now I have to go and do something separate. It'll help build, I think, another level of wanting to use our property, because then they're able to reap the benefits of what they donate to us.
I'm not sure I understand that. So if someone decides, I want to donate $5,000 to whatever, and you're saying, so we're going to allow that person to use that facility because they donated money and not charge them.
Well, that would, essentially, it is the charge, right? So we're saying you're giving these funds.
That wouldn't be bad. See, I don't think that's, yeah.
They're giving a donation. They still, if they want to use the facilities, they still need to pay the price for it. That's, you know.
Just because if somebody
Yeah.
donates $5,000, then that's a lot of time, and they're going to monopolize a lot of that playing time, and, you know, and, yeah. So I don't know that I like that idea either.
That's not, is that written into the
It is in
policy?
the policy, yes.
Where is that in the policy? Can you point me to it?
It says that, let me find it exactly. Yeah, that's essentially what, it's like we do with in-kind.
I mean,
But for an in-kind, like, I can understand if they, let's say renting a field's $100, right? If somebody gives, you know, a $5,000 donation, maybe we say, you know what, you can use the field a time or two, right? But you don't want to say you can use the field 100 times, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think the alternative, and we certainly could remove it, but the alternative is then they rent this field in small chunks and they're not giving us the cash. So, I mean, they could still, they
But if-
certainly could.
But if they're using it, the amount of cash that they give you, you're not coming out ahead because the field is getting used as much as you're getting the donation for. So it's getting used that amount of money, so you're really not coming out ahead because of the wear and tear on the field. I mean, do you see what I'm saying? I mean, if somebody gives you $1,000 and it's $100 rental and they use it 10 times, then you've been used through 10 games that's wore and tear the turf, wore and tore the bases, wore and tore. So you're really not coming out ahead by doing that. Now, I can understand somebody, hey, you get 3 free times if you donate and $1,000. Then you're getting some kind of monies for, hey, goodwill or giving. Plus, we're saying, hey, thank you so much. We're gonna, give you 3 times of using the field for making that donation. But I think you've got to do some kind of offset, something like that, or you're not coming out ahead.
Well, I certainly hear what you're saying, and we can absolutely take that out. The goal of the strategic plan was to encourage the use of our facilities by the community, to make those spaces well-known to the community, and to increase access to our buildings by the community. So that was the vein that this group took up, right? Yes, we do want to have additional funds, but the real focus of the work was the strategic plan guidelines that were saying, we will identify spaces, we will make them available as we can, and we will open our schools to the community as much as possible. That's where the thinking of that one came in, but we could certainly, there's nothing stuck. We could certainly remove that component from it. It's just one section of that policy. I haven't had a chance to pull it up while we're talking, but we could certainly do that.
And however, I agree with the community using I just think sometimes it also can be on the heavy teeter of abuse. We see that. We see some of the things that's happening already. I mean, that's one of the reasons we had to limit, at the tracks and things, because people weren't taking care of them because we just, hey, I pay my taxes, I can do what I want to do. I'm sorry, no, that don't work out that way. So, I do agree, but on the other hand, I do think we need to limit to keep from the abuse and the wear and tear. So that way our students have it, because that's a lot of the problem. They're not getting it because everybody else is using everything.
Well,
So.
and the other problem I see is that we're not 100% sure that we're charging them the right amount of money. So in that point, you actually come out behind instead of ahead. I mean, I see it here, by the way. It's on page 2 out of 5, I think. Under fees for use of facility, it says organizations who donate to schools will receive a credit for facility rental fees to access school facilities, commensurate with the value of the donation. So I think, for me, I would probably strike the commensurate with the value of the donation, and then we can it leaves it up to us to decide what that might be.
If we could just remove the whole thing, because when we leave it up to air, that is when organizations get, it's kind of where we were. We let one group do something because of a handshake here, and another group do this over there, and this group do that, and then we got rid of consistency. So if we could just strike that altogether, I think it would be easier to implement that policy.
I think so too.
Agreed.
Dr. Whitaker, could we maybe look at the use of the fields that get more abuse and are more expensive? Could we possibly look at the cost being more for the outdoor rental fees instead of the indoor?
We certainly could.
I mean, I would think field usage would be, especially on the turf fields, that needs to be because of the wear and tear. I would verse the taking care of it in expense of how many times and the cost versus what I was going to rent it for, because it looks like we're renting everything here for the same price, and it doesn't cost the same to repair things as it does some others.
Well, and the hard part with that for the committee was every school has different facilities and access. Each room space is different field spaces, different sizes. They were built, so we really did work through those questions and try to address them. But again, I think that's why we stopped using the policy in the past, because folks didn't know what to charge. They weren't sure when. And so with that, again, the guidance of the strategic plan was to make the facilities usable and accessible and to communicate that to our public. And so that was the goal of this group, was to streamline that, make it easier to rent the facilities, make it easier to know what to do. I think one of the problems with the damage to the fields that we've been seeing is when they moved away from having someone clean to the building attendant. That's where a lot of the damage was coming in, and a lot of the things was groups were not taking care of our property because they were not being charged when they did not, and they were not being charged for what they did not clean. So we would say, we're gonna have a building attendant, but they don't clean, you clean. And then the groups would leave, and it would not be clean, and our custodians would come into work, and they would be upset because they had to clean after that group. And then we also didn't charge for that, so we're doing all of those things now. Within the new policy, there would be a building attendant. There will also be cleaning fees, non-negotiable. The amount that you mess up is the amount that we charge you, so groups will benefit from cleaning up after themselves. But if they don't, we are going to charge them the number of hours it takes. Before, we were not doing that. Also, if they damage anything, we're going to fine them and bill them. We do that at this point, but depending upon what that principal at that school sees is probably more indicative of what those charges have been. We think that making it more simple will make it easier for the 20 schools to implement, but we certainly can make any changes that you would like to.
So, if I recall correctly, when we did the turf field at Christiansburg, it was estimated how long the field was gonna last, how much it was gonna take for the upkeep of different parts of the field, and that money was being budgeted so that when it was needed, the monies would be there. And evidently that has not been happening.
No, ma'am. So, we're working on that, and I know it's kind of off topic, but that master facility plan, because that is the piece that is the missing link, right? We have to have a long-term plan, and that's what we've been working to develop. I know we haven't brought it to you yet, but we have been working diligently on this, because you have to have a long-term plan. These type of things are not cheap. Replacing fields, replacing tracks, I know it sounds silly, but replacing a light bulb on a tennis court, that is not simple stuff. All of these things take a lot of money, and they take planning. And so with that master plan, our hope is to be able to bring to you a long-term vision, not just for the classrooms, but also for our facilities. Because what tends to happen is, I get phone calls, I need this. And if there's no money, we don't have the funds to send out, a whole bunch of dirt, or to send out, simple things like mulch. All of those different things cost money, and they need to be planned for and budgeted, and unfortunately, they haven't been.
Okay, so this is when we make these needs known to community and ask for those in-kind donations like dirt and mulch, and folks who are willing to come out and line the fields and learn how to do that correctly. Because to Jamie's point, when you have a handful of people who are trying to keep that piece up, and it just keeps getting used and keeps getting used, but they want it to be in the condition it should be for everybody, it gets old. And as she said, people move on. So we've got to put something in place around the maintenance piece of that.
Absolutely.
Keeping those fields and not just depending on random folks stepping up.
Yes.
How we make that happen.
Well, we need to make sure
Budgeting.
that those fields are in the tip-top shape for the games for our student athletes when they play school games. So we need to make sure that whatever we do, that when it comes time for one of our student athletic games, that field is the way that field needs to be.
Right, correct. It
Yeah.
needs to be the way it's supposed to be for anybody who's in
Right,
that field.
right.
because That means there's safety issues if it's not. But it also means if the lines aren't correct, then that throws everything off. It looks terrible, which reflects on the school, because that's what people are looking at, and reflects on the district. That is, why aren't you maintaining? And it's because the funding's not there, and we need to do a better job of asking our community folks to say, can you give us a truckload of mulch? Hey, we need some dirt. There's enough construction and stuff going on that someone can say, yeah, we got some we can bring to you and take care of these things. But there's got to be some kind of relief and funds that are going back into the programs when folks are coming to participate and to view different programs. Those funds need to go back to those programs. I understand the big picture, but that goes to that facilities plan that used to be in place and then kind of went away. But it's a big issue. It is. And I feel sorry. I've watched coaches go out and repeatedly make sure that the fields and the nets and everything are ready to go, that the auditorium is set to the best that they can. So, yeah.
I would like to make a motion to amend the motion. Can I do that? That we strike that one section about the in-kind. And I know this can't be the be-all, end-all, but we have to start somewhere. And this is better than what we had before, which was nothing.
Is there a second for Ms. Graham's motion?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion to amend? Am I doing that right?
Right, this is an amendment to the original motion. We'll vote on the amendment.
Yes.
And then there was an original motion on the table. And so then we will vote on the motion either with or without the amendment. Second.
Try me again.
So is there any, so any discussion on your amendment right now is where we're at? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Drake, would you please call the roll on the amendment?
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Cass?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Mr. Chewbacca?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. And before we move on, I just want to make sure, I know, Mr. Hudson, we've all been talking here, and I just want to make sure that you have a chance to weigh in if you'd like to. I know it's hard to get in sometimes when you're remote.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I've been following the conversation. I think I agree with most everything there. I think, certainly, I would imagine a rationale for having that one clause in there about the in-kind was to encourage donations from the community. And I do think that by not having any mechanism in place to reward that, I'm not sure how many donations we might end up getting as a result of that, but I definitely agree with the conversation about, if you donate more, you get more access, it's going to cause more wear and tear. So, I'm fine taking that out. Maybe in the future we come up with some other mechanism to encourage donations in order to help maintain the facility better. So, yeah, that's all I've got. Thank you.
So, any other discussion
I
on?
was just going to say, just to follow up on that, just to not sound like it's a, kind of thing. It's just like me donating to the girls softball. On a banner, a sign, it goes up on the fence. But I didn't say, hey, because I made a donation, I get to go up there with my buddies and play softball on the girls softball team. That's not the way it kind of works, so I don't mean to be disrespectful at all. But as a business, as anybody, and we look at some of the big businesses in the area that have scoreboards, gators, it's dirt. We've gotten a lot of donations from a lot of businesses in our area, and I don't think they expect anything in return. And I don't think it would be fair to say, well, you as an individual can have time if you give, when we've had lots of big businesses in our area that have donated just graciously to all our programs. And that's why I think that we need to, like I said, when I make a donation, if they want to put a sign up or a banner up, great. If they don't, I'm giving it because. So that's all I got to say.
So, my last comment on this is just that I think that, I think what the strategic plan is calling for, and maybe what we're trying to do here, is kind of going in two different directions here, and it might be, I agree with, I'll be voting yes, because I agree with Ms. Graham that this is a step in the right direction, but I do think that the board needs to kind of revisit this in the future and think about the bigger picture. Because on one hand, I think, you know, we are part of the community, and so you do want we do want our fields to be available for the community to use and our facilities for the community to use. But at the same time, when we're not funding the maintenance of the fields, which includes lining them and keeping the dirt and grass right, or, you know, keeping the artificial surfaces intact, we're not funding them, and then we're having to rely on teams and clubs and volunteers to do that. It gets a little bit wonky with what we're trying to do here with the money. And so I kind of agree. I see where you're coming from. I agree with you. I thought we were going to be charging the money that would cover that wear and tear, but I see now that we're not really doing that. And so it gets a little bit, it gets a little bit dicey. I don't know. I mean,
For me, the strategic plan and talking about the facility use, I kind of looked at that as more of our buildings bringing in educational purposes and educations to the community when we had certain classes and when we needed to educate adults in certain areas, and even sometimes with childcare and after-school hours and, you know, getting tutors and things like that. I looked at that as more of that kind of, I feel like I'm trying to break my neck to see you to talk, but that's okay. So I guess I didn't put the two with the strategic plan together. I mean, granted, we're always want to welcome, but there's lots and lots of schools and facilities that don't allow anybody to, because so much work goes into the maintenance and like you said, the expensive fields. But, so I do think, I agree with Mark, it's a very, very different, very, very different, so.
They are. What I'll try to do is, like I said, bring the information to you, to keep you apprised of where we are in comparison to the past. I think that would be helpful for you to see, you know, we really, the focus was that strategic plan with keeping in mind the business side of it as well and trying to not bring in less. So our hope is that the recommendations that we brought to you balance that. The good news is you have the ability to change policy as you choose, and if we report to you and you see that it's not meeting your needs, then we can certainly change that at any point next year and say, hey, we're not bringing in what we anticipated, or yes, we are, we're doing a good job, and, you know, we're right on track for at least what we had or more. And so we're happy to keep those updates to you so that we don't get to the end and go, this was a complete failure.
all right, if there's no further discussion, let's bring this to a vote. All right, Ms. Drake, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin? Yes. Ms. Graham? Yes. Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Cass?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Mr. Chewbacca?
Yes.
7 in favor.
All right, motion carries. Okay, next item is policy 5-1.8, abusive work environment. Does anyone wish to make a motion regarding the revised policy?
Second.
A motion and a second. Board, is there any discussion on this?
The only thing I guess I would like to see is that we let our folks know this is available. That's all I had.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, hearing no one else, we'll move on to a vote on that. Ms. Drake, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Cass?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Mr. Chewbacca?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. All right, and last thing in our business meeting, the legislative policy revisions. Does anyone wish to make a motion regarding the legislative policy updates?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on on any of these? And these are the annual updates that we make
These are
to.
the ones that we're required to do.
Correct, yeah. Okay. No discussion? All right. Ms. Drake, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Cass?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Mr. Chewbacca?
Yes.
7 in favor.
Motion carries. All right, Board, we're on to new business. Are there any items of new business that anyone wants to bring up?
Unfinished business.
We do not have any items of unfinished business,
Right, that's why it's not on the agenda.
so it's not on the agenda. But you can bring it up under new business or announcements or information. All right, I'm sorry, go
Wait a
ahead.
minute. If there's unfinished business that a board member wants to bring up,
Unfinished business would have had to been carried from the last meeting
okay, so
for it to go into unfinished business.
we're going back to, when do we bring up issues that have been discussed and there hasn't been any, information given or follow-up on that?
So I think, Ms. Graham and I talked about that a few weeks back, and I think it's appropriate to go ahead and bring them up under new business. It doesn't have to, new business, if you bring it up under new business, it doesn't have to lead to new business necessarily. Now, if it's the will of the board, and I agree with you, Ms. Graham, it's not, I mean, I think we're trying to follow Robert's rules here. But if the board feels like we do need to have a separate section to handle what we used to do under unfinished business, which was not, we weren't quite doing it properly under Robert's rules, I think we could create a new agenda item. We wouldn't call it unfinished business, we'd call it something else, and we could do that in the future.
No, I think that's needed.
Okay?
So do we need a motion to that effect?
How about, yeah, I mean, we're in new business, so how about we put it on the agenda for next time, or, you know, to discuss? Is that,
Yeah, that'll work.
okay? Let me write that down. Any other items in new business, board?
Hey, Mark, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what that, what the request was for there.
So, yeah, Ms. Franklin brought up, so under Robert's rules, the concept of unfinished business is when you basically table something or delay it to discuss it later. So if you don't officially do that, then you really don't have any unfinished business. Now, for years, it was the board's practice to use the section of the agenda under unfinished business to bring up any further discussion on items we had already talked about. And so what we have put on new business for the next meeting is to basically discuss how we would like to basically bring that back in a way that doesn't, you know, that still follows Robert's rules of order. Does that make sense?
I got you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe we can call it old business or something, but we'll talk about it next time.
And you just say future, at a future meeting, correct? Okay.
We'll talk about that. Yeah, I mean, I think it would even be appropriate to talk about it at the next meeting, but we can, it's always future meeting. Okay, moving on to announcements and information. Are there any announcements, board? Information?
I'd just like to, wait a minute here, congratulate, I think Eastern Montgomery Girls Soccer on state championship, and I want to say congrats for Auburn baseball's going as far as they went. I'm real proud of them, and Christiansburg went to the playoffs as well, so I'm sure I'm missing a group or a team that didn't.
So yes, I'm going to say kudos to Auburn softball for the state champion 4 years in a row.
Right.
And kudos to my Mustangs, so proud of you. And I am also very proud of Auburn girls soccer. They did a phenomenal job. You're still a winner, but no, we've had some outstanding.
Lots of them, they're all at the same few days getting in
Right.
lots of.
We've had some outstanding athletic performances, and I think there was even CHS tennis, a couple of tennis stars that were mentioned by A.D. Cromer. And I'm sure there's probably a few more we're forgetting. We've got so many schools to keep up with. But just congratulations to all of our sports teams that have done so well. We're so proud of you.
Anyone else? Sue?
Yes. I just want to make a comment, I guess. On part of it is, wanted to say it anyway, but then our public forum made me want to say it more. So I just want to clarify a few things. And one is that we didn't celebrate Pride Month in the schools because Pride Month is June, and nobody's in school in June. So, as a matter of fact, we've had to take down pride flags, we had to take down rainbows, and pretty much scrub our classrooms of anything that is pride related. So when we're being told that we're celebrating Pride Month, maybe other people are, I get that, and I see it, but we specifically have not done anything to celebrate Pride Month, which doesn't mean that we don't support it, just that we haven't done anything. And the other thing that keeps coming up in our public forum on an ongoing basis is the word indoctrination, and I'm really tired of hearing it. It is an insult to our teachers to say that they are indoctrinating our students. And if you have a specific situation where you feel that your child is being indoctrinated, then bring it to Dr. Bragan and he can address that particular situation. But to come here to every public forum and say that we are indoctrinating our students is an insult to our staff and to others who work with our students. And I think that you need to think hard about if there are situations, then bring them to Dr. Bragan and he will address them. And the fact of saying that therefore you show no hate, you don't condone hatred, I'm going to have to tell you that's not accurate, because a year and a half ago, not quite a year and a half ago, believe me, I saw a lot of hatred. I received thousands of emails, death threats, all because I thought it was important to protect our students and our staff in our schools during COVID. That's all. And somebody decided that, oh, we need to show your Facebook page because they decided to misinterpret my Facebook page. First of all, they shouldn't be doing that, bringing that up in public, especially pictures of my parents the night that my dad was being operated on, pictures of my dad in the hospital. They had no right to do that. And the pictures that they showed was me and my next door neighbors celebrating them moving. They were my COVID pod, and those were the people I was with without a mask. The other picture they showed were 4 of my best friends who were teachers, who were vaccinated, and who we were celebrating for the holidays. And that's what they used. And because of that, 5 million people viewed me on Fox News because of the hatred that people showed because they disagreed with me about a mask. That's all they disagreed about. But I didn't agree with them on vaccination. Just because you disagree with someone does not give you the right to treat me or my family in that way. I walked out of that meeting because it was rude and disrespectful. And I would walk out again if somebody did that to me again and did that to my family. So please don't come here and tell me that we show hate. We don't hate. We're trying to teach children to care. We're trying to teach children to be kind. We're trying to teach children to appreciate each other for their differences, not dislike each other because they are different. So I really hope, as I got 6 more months on this board, I hope I don't hear people come talking about that again, because guess what? You're going to have to listen to me every time you come here. And I will say the same thing over and over again. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other announcements or information? I'd like to personally just say thank you to Marty for filling in while I was gone. I know it was just one meeting, but it was actually 2 agenda preps, and,
We didn't miss you, Mark.
what's that?
We didn't miss you at all.
That's fine, that's totally okay. I had a good time despite it was work. But it is always good to have somebody who's seasoned in the role, and I really appreciate it. All right, the upcoming school board meetings are, oh, I did have, actually, I'm sorry, I had one other piece of information, and that I don't think I've had a chance to tell you guys, that I did meet with Sherry Blevins before I left on my trip, and we had a really good meeting. This was something I think that we as a board said we need to do a better job opening up dialogue, and I think I had mentioned this part before, but we did talk about it again, that, you know, just to encourage all of you, and she's going to do the same with her board members, to reach out at least to each other one-on-one, to start having some dialogue that hopefully will lead to some, you know, more productive larger group meetings. So I'm happy to talk to you guys about any of those details if you want one-on-one, but just, you know, reach out to a different to a Board of Supervisors member that's not, you know, your counterpart in your own district is kind of was our idea anyway. And just, you know, if you can get 1 or 2 of those meetings in the next few months, I think that would go a long way to helping our county and our kids and the relationship between the boards. So, so upcoming school board meetings agenda prep is on board docs. You can see it there. And with that, I think we will go into closed session to discuss personnel matters. Do I have a motion to enter into closed session as authorized by Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia to discuss 3 personnel matters?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Drake, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Bond? Yes. Ms. Franklin?
Yes.
Ms. Graham? Yes. Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
You may have already moved on. Oh, no,
said
that was a
yes.
Ms. Cass?
Yes.
Ms. Parton?
Yes.
Mr. Trabaka?
Yes.
7 in favor?
Motion carries. We are in closed session. And I want to ask, is Mr. Hudson joining us in closed session?
If you would like to.
Okay.